A washing machine looks ordinary now. It sits in a laundry room, a bathroom corner, a basement, or behind a closet door. Clothes go in, detergent goes in, a button is pressed. The machine fills, turns, drains, spins, and the job feels almost automatic. But for most of human history, clean clothing came from pain. Not poetic pain, real pain. Red hands, bent backs, arms sore from scrubbing, fingers cracked by harsh soap, skin burned by hot water, shoulders tired from carrying buckets, wet sheets so heavy they could feel like sacks of grain. Laundry was not a small chore. It was one of the hardest jobs in the household, and in many families, it fell almost entirely on women. If the hidden history of ordinary objects makes you look at daily life differently, subscribe before we go back to the world before the wash cycle existed. Because before washing machines became common, laundry was a full-body battle against dirt, sweat, smoke, grease, illness, and time. A modern person might say, "I need to do laundry," and mean sorting clothes, loading a drum, and waiting. In an older home, that same sentence could mean planning an entire day around water, fire, soap, weather, and muscle. It could mean starting before sunrise. It could mean carrying water from a pump, a well, a stream, or a shared tap. It could mean heating that water in heavy pots, because warm water loosened dirt better than cold water. It could mean shaving or cutting soap, stirring it into tubs and bending over fabric for hours. And that was only the beginning. Clothes did not clean themselves just because they touched soap. They had to be soaked, rubbed, slapped, beaten, boiled, rinsed, wrung out, lifted, carried, and hung. A shirt could be worked by hand across a washboard until the knuckles scraped. A sheet could take real strength to twist dry. A blanket could become so heavy with water that moving it from one tub to another felt like lifting a person. Now imagine doing that not for one outfit, but for a household. Men's work shirts, women's dresses, children's clothes, towels, bedding, aprons, table linens, work rags, anything stained by cooking or sweat, anything stained by mud, smoke, or sickness, and laundry returned again and again. The moment clothes were clean, the next pile was already beginning. That is part of what made it so exhausting. Laundry was not a single task. It was a cycle. Food could be eaten and gone. Floors could stay clean for a little while. But clothing touched the body all day. Bedding touched the body all night. Fabric collected sweat, skin, dust, ash, blood, milk, grease, and smells. Every family produced dirty laundry simply by being alive, and the larger the family, the heavier the burden. For women with children, laundry could feel endless. Small children created extra washing long before modern cleaning products softened the load. Cloth diapers and stained garments had to be dealt with quickly because smell and disease were real concerns. Clean fabric was not just about looking respectable. It was connected to health, comfort, and dignity. But society often treated this labor as if it barely existed. Clean shirts appeared in drawers, fresh sheets appeared on beds, towels were ready, children looked presentable. Husbands had work clothes, guests saw tablecloths and curtains. But the labor behind those clean things was easy to ignore. Because it happened inside the home, behind fences, in washhouses, near pumps or in back rooms. The result was visible. The effort was hidden. That hidden effort shaped women's lives. Laundry could decide how a week was organized. In many households, wash day became a fixed event because it took so much time and energy. Monday was commonly associated with washing in many places, partly because families wanted clean clothes after the weekend, and partly because the work needed its own day. A woman could not simply squeeze hand washing into a spare hour. There might not be a spare hour. There might be a whole chain of work waiting. Fetch water, heat water, wash whites, wash darker clothes. Rinse, starch, hang, dry, bring in, iron, fold, mend, and put away. Each step demanded attention. If the fire went low, the water cooled. If the weather turned wet, drying became harder. If clothes froze outside, they had to be handled stiff and cold. If water was scarce, rinsing became a problem. If soap was poor, stains stayed. If fabric was delicate, rough washing could damage it. If illness entered the house, laundry became more urgent and more unpleasant. Would you still own as many clothes if every wash meant hours of hauling, boiling, scrubbing, and wringing? That question matters because modern closets are built on easy washing. We can own more fabric because cleaning it has become simple. Before machines, fewer clothes often made sense. Every extra garment was not just something to buy, it was something to maintain. A family did not only pay for clothing with money, someone paid for it with labor. And that someone was usually a woman. The work also affected the body over time. Repeated bending could strain the back. Wringing heavy cloth could hurt wrists and shoulders. Hot water could burn. Lye-based soaps could irritate skin. Cold rinsing could numb hands. Steam could fill the room. In crowded cities, shared wash spaces could be noisy, cramped, and uncomfortable. In rural homes, distance from water made everything harder. This was not the gentle image of domestic life that later advertisements liked to show. It was physical labor, and it was necessary labor. The strange thing is that people understood the problem long before the modern washing machine solved it. Nobody needed a scientist to explain that laundry was hard. Everyone could see it. The challenge was finding a way to make the machine do what hands had always done. Loosen dirt, move water through cloth, rub fabric enough to clean it, rinse away soap, and remove enough water so the clothes could dry. That sounds simple now, but it was not simple at all. A machine had to move fabric without destroying it. It had to handle water without leaking everywhere. It had to be strong enough to clean, but not so violent that it tore clothes apart. It had to be affordable, useful, and safe enough to bring into ordinary homes. And even then, it needed something many homes did not yet have: reliable water, drainage, space, and later, electricity. So the need was obvious, the burden was enormous, the promise was powerful. But the first machines did not arrive as quiet white boxes with buttons and spin cycles. They came slowly, awkwardly, and sometimes with more effort than people today would expect. Before the washing machine could change women's lives, it had to become something ordinary families could actually use. The first attempts to make laundry easier did not look like the machines we know today. There was no smooth white box, no quiet electric hum, no digital timer, no gentle chime at the end. Early washing devices were often wooden tubs, barrels, paddles, rollers, handles, cranks, and gears. Some looked more like farm tools than household appliances. They were built around one basic idea: if human hands were tired of rubbing cloth against a board, maybe a machine could create that same movement. That idea was simple, making it work was not. A piece of dirty fabric needs more than water. Dirt clings to fibers. Grease sticks, sweat dries into cloth. Soap helps loosen the grime, but movement is what pulls it away. Before machines, that movement came from arms, wrists, shoulders, and backs. The washer's job was to replace some of that human effort with repeated motion. Some early machines used a hand crank to turn clothes inside a tub. Others pushed clothes back and forth through soapy water. Some used paddles, some used rollers. Some squeezed water out through a wringer, which was a pair of rollers that pressed wet clothes flat as they passed between them. A wringer could save effort, but it could also be dangerous. Fingers, hair, sleeves, and children's hands could get caught. A woman using one had to pay attention every second. The machine helped, but it did not let her walk away. It did not remove the job. It changed the shape of the job. That is one of the most important parts of this story. The washing machine did not arrive all at once as freedom in a box. It arrived in stages. At first, the machine still needed human power. Someone had to fill it. Someone had to heat or carry the water. Someone had to turn the crank. Someone had to drain the tub. Someone had to guide the clothes through the wringer. Someone had to hang everything to dry. In many homes, the worker was still bent over water, still surrounded by steam, still tired by the end. But there was a difference. The hardest rubbing could be reduced. The twisting could be reduced. The time spent scrubbing each piece by hand could shrink. For a woman who had spent years forcing dirty fabric clean with her own body, even a rough machine could feel like relief. Still, relief was not the same as transformation. For a machine to truly change daily life, it had to reach ordinary households. And that was where the story slowed down. Invention was only one part of the problem. Homes had to be ready for it. Think about what a washing machine needs. It needs water. It needs a place to drain dirty water. It needs space. It needs a strong floor. Later, it needs electricity. It needs money from the family budget. It needs repair parts. It needs people to believe it is worth trusting. Many homes did not have all of that. A family could hear about a washing machine and still not be able to use one. If water had to be carried by hand, filling a machine was still work. If there was no proper drain, emptying dirty water was still work. If the machine was expensive, it belonged first to families with more money. If electricity had not reached a rural home, an electric washer was just a dream in a catalog. This is why the history of the washing machine is also a history of plumbing, power, manufacturing, and household money. The machine was not only an object, it belonged to a system. That system had to grow around it. Factories had to make machines in large numbers. Stores had to sell them. Advertising had to convince families that the washer was not a strange luxury. Electric companies had to bring power into homes. Water pipes and drains had to make washing indoors easier. Roads and delivery networks had to move heavy appliances from factories to buyers. Only then could a washing machine become more than a clever device. And even when it entered the home, it did not always enter without argument. Some people worried machines would damage clothing. Some thought they were too costly. Some believed good housework required the old methods. Others saw appliances as status symbols, not necessities. In poorer households, a washer could remain out of reach for years, even when everyone understood its value. Would you call a hand-cranked washer a machine of freedom? Or just a slightly better version of the same exhausting job? The honest answer is both. For some women, it was a real improvement. For others, it was another tool that still demanded long hours. The early machine could lighten the load without fully changing the life around it. It could reduce the most punishing motions, but it could not erase all the steps that came before and after. That is why the electric washer mattered so much. Once motors began turning the drum or agitator, the machine could do more of the repeated motion by itself. The agitator was the moving piece inside many washers that pushed water and clothes around. It created the churning action that hands once created on a washboard. That meant the machine was no longer just holding water while a person worked. It was doing part of the work. This changed the feeling of laundry. A woman still had to sort clothes, add soap, manage water, move wet laundry, and dry it. But now, during part of the process, the machine could keep working without her arms doing every motion. That mattered because laundry was not only difficult, it was repetitive, the same movement again and again. The same twisting, the same rubbing, the same lifting. Machines are good at repetition. Human bodies pay for it. As electric washers became more common, manufacturers sold them with a promise that went far beyond clean clothes. They sold time. They sold modernity. They sold the image of a home where the hardest tasks could be softened by technology. Advertisements often showed smiling women beside bright machines, as if the appliance had turned domestic labor into something graceful and easy. The truth was more complicated. A washing machine could save hours of brutal effort, but it did not remove the expectation that women should manage the home. In many cases, the machine made one chore faster while leaving the larger responsibility in place. The household still needed clean clothes. Children still made messes. Men still needed shirts. Beds still needed sheets. The difference was that one of the worst jobs had finally started to lose some of its physical cruelty. And that mattered deeply, because once laundry no longer consumed the same amount of strength, something else became possible. A woman's time could be rearranged. Her day could open, even if only a little. Her body could be spared some of the heaviest strain. The household could expect cleaner clothes more often. Children could be sent out looking neater. Work clothing could be washed with less dread. But every improvement carried a hidden question. When a machine saves time, who gets that time? Does the person who used to do the labor get rest? Does she get paid work, education, social life, more time with children, more sleep? Or does the household simply raise its standards and fill the saved hours with new expectations? That question sits at the center of the washing machine's real impact. The machine promised freedom, but freedom did not come only from gears, motors, tubs, and wringers. It came from what society allowed women to do with the hours the machine gave back. And that is where this appliance stopped being just a tool for cleaning clothes and became part of a much bigger change inside the home. The most powerful thing a washing machine gave back was not just clean clothing, it gave back time. That sounds simple, but inside the home, time was everything. Time decided when a woman woke up. Time decided whether she could sit down. Time decided whether she could leave the house. Time decided whether a child could be watched closely, whether a meal could be prepared slowly, whether sewing could be finished, whether rest was possible, whether paid work outside the home could even be considered. Before washing machines became common, laundry could take control of a week. It was not only the washing itself, it was the planning around it. A household needed enough water. The weather had to be watched, space had to be cleared, fires or stoves had to be prepared. Wet clothes had to be moved at the right moment. Drying had to happen before dampness created smells, mildew, or stiffness. So when machines began taking over the most repetitive motions, the change was not small. It shifted the rhythm of domestic life. A woman could start the wash and step away for part of the process. Not completely at first, and not in every home, but more than before. The machine could churn while she cooked. It could work while she cleaned another room. It could reduce the hours spent bent over a tub. Even when the rest of the household did not fully notice, her body noticed. Her back noticed. Her hands noticed. And her shoulders noticed as well. That matters because domestic labor was often described as light work simply because it happened indoors. But laundry proved the opposite. The home could be a workplace. It had tools, schedules, repeated strain, and physical risk. The only difference was that much of this work was unpaid and expected. Washing machines exposed a strange truth. When a machine was invented to reduce women's labor, people suddenly admitted that the labor had been heavy all along. Advertisements understood this. They did not simply sell clean clothes, they sold relief. They showed women smiling in neat kitchens, tidy laundry rooms, and bright homes. The message was clear. The modern housewife would not be trapped in old drudgery. Technology would lift the burden, but advertising always tells the easy version. The real version had more layers. Yes, washing machines reduced some of the hardest labor. Yes, they saved time. Yes, they made clean clothing easier to produce. But the machine also helped create a new standard. Once washing became easier, people expected more washing. Clothes could be cleaned more often. Sheets could be changed more often. Children could be kept neater. Work shirts could be fresher. A household that once had to tolerate some dirt between wash days could now aim for a higher level of cleanliness. This is the paradox of household technology. A machine can reduce effort, but it can also raise expectations. When hand washing took enormous labor, families often owned fewer garments and wore clothes longer between washes. When machine washing became easier, more clothes entered the home. Fashion changed. Fabric became more available. Children needed school clothes, play clothes, church clothes, sleep clothes, and later sports clothes. Adults owned more outfits for work and social life. The machine made this possible, but it also created more things to manage, so the pile did not disappear. It changed. Instead of one brutal wash day that swallowed the week, laundry could become a repeating background task. Smaller loads, more frequent washing, more sorting, more folding, more attention to colors, fabrics, stains, and appearance. The labor became less punishing, but it did not become nothing. That is why the washing machine story is not as simple as machine arrives, woman is free. The machine helped deeply. It removed some of the worst physical strain from one of the most demanding household chores. But it also worked inside a culture that still assumed women were responsible for the home. A woman might spend less time scrubbing, yet still be judged by the cleanliness of her family's clothing. She might have a machine, yet still be expected to notice every stain, every missing sock, every towel, every bedsheet, every collar that needed attention. The appliance changed the labor. It did not instantly change who was responsible for it. And that responsibility carried emotional weight. Clean clothes were connected to respectability. A child sent to school in dirty clothing could reflect badly on the mother. A husband in a stained shirt could be seen as evidence of a poorly kept home. Guests noticing dull linens or smelly towels might silently judge the household. In this way, laundry was not just fabric care, it was social proof. The washing machine made that proof easier to produce, but it also made the proof more expected. Still, the time saved was real. For many women, even a few hours mattered. A machine could mean less exhaustion at the end of the day. It could mean more time for childcare, reading, sewing for income, community life, or paid work. For some women, labor-saving appliances became part of the larger movement that made life outside constant domestic service more realistic. This did not happen evenly. Wealthier households gained access earlier. Rural households often waited longer for electricity and indoor plumbing. Poorer families might use shared machines, laundries, or laundromats. Some women still washed by hand, while others had electric washers at home. Race, class, geography, and income shaped who benefited first and who waited. That unevenness matters because technology is never just about invention, it is about access. A washing machine in a showroom changed nothing for a woman who could not afford it. An electric washer in a catalog changed nothing for a home without electricity. A modern appliance in one neighborhood could exist beside hand washing in another. The future did not arrive for everyone at the same speed. But wherever the machine did arrive, it changed the meaning of laundry. The job became less like a battle and more like a managed routine. Instead of building a whole day around tubs, a woman could fit washing into the pattern of other chores. That sounds ordinary now, but it was one of the quiet revolutions of the household. A task that once demanded total attention could now share time with other tasks. That is the beginning of modern domestic life. Not because housework vanished. It did not. But because machines began separating human time from constant physical effort. A stove could cook with less tending than an open fire. A refrigerator could preserve food without daily ice delivery. A vacuum could pull dust from carpets faster than beating rugs outside. And a washing machine could keep fabric moving without arms doing every turn. Each of these machines changed the home from a place of endless manual labor into a place managed by appliances, schedules, and electricity. But the washing machine had a special place because laundry touched everyone. Every body in the house created it. Every bed created it. Every meal could create it. Every job, illness, season, and stage of childhood created more of it. Reducing laundry labor meant reducing one of the most constant demands placed on women's bodies. When a machine saves time, who decides what happens to that time? For many women, the answer was not simple. Some gained breathing room. Some gained the ability to take on paid work. Some gained more time with family. Some simply faced cleaner house standards that absorbed the saved hours. The machine opened a door, but society often decided how wide that door could swing. That is what makes the washing machine so important. Its impact was not loud. It did not march through streets or announce itself with speeches. It turned quietly in kitchens, basements, washrooms, and shared laundry spaces. Load after load, it changed the relationship between women, time, and household expectations. And once that change began, laundry was no longer only about removing dirt from cloth. It became part of a larger question about whose time mattered, whose labor counted, and why some of the hardest work in history was treated as if it was just part of being a woman. The washing machine did not change women's lives because it made laundry disappear. It changed women's lives because it made one of the heaviest household jobs smaller, faster, and less punishing. That difference mattered more than people often admit. A task that once demanded heat, water, strength, planning, and hours of attention could now be handled with a machine doing much of the motion. Clothes still had to be sorted, stains still had to be noticed, loads still had to be dried, folded, and put away. But the cruelest part, the endless physical fight with wet fabric, was no longer the same. That was a quiet kind of freedom, not total freedom, not instant equality, not the end of domestic work, but real freedom in the body. Freedom from some of the back pain, freedom from some of the burned hands, freedom from some of the long wash days that swallowed time before a woman had any choice about the rest of her day. And that kind of freedom matters because time is not just time, time is life. An hour not spent wringing sheets by hand could become an hour of rest, or paid work, or reading, or walking outside, or caring for a child without also fighting a mountain of wet clothes, or simply being less exhausted when the day ended. That may sound small from a modern distance, but for women whose work was measured in repeated tasks, small savings repeated every week became something much larger. The washing machine also changed what families considered normal. Clean clothing became easier to expect. Fresh sheets became easier to maintain. Towels could be washed more often. Children could be cleaned up after spills, mud, and accidents without turning every mess into a crisis. Work clothes could be refreshed with less dread. A family's appearance could be managed with less suffering behind the scenes. That changed social life too. Clothing is never just fabric. It tells other people something before a word is spoken. A clean shirt can mean respectability. A fresh dress can mean care. Washed bedding can mean comfort and health. Clean uniforms, school clothes, and work clothes can affect how a person is treated in public. The washing machine helped make that level of cleanliness easier for more households to reach. But the machine also created a strange invisibility. Once washing became easier, people noticed the work even less. The old labor had been hidden because it happened inside the home. The new labor became hidden because the machine made it look simple. Press a button, wait, move the load. From the outside, that could seem like nothing. But anyone who manages a household knows laundry still has a memory. It remembers every meal spilled on a shirt, every soccer practice, every fever sweat in a bed, every towel left damp on the floor, every baby accident, every work shift, every rainy walk, every sheet, sock, collar, sleeve, and stain. The washer took away much of the brutal motion. It did not take away the mental list. That is why the washing machine belongs in a bigger story about women's unpaid labor. Machines changed the home, but they did not automatically change the value society placed on the work. A machine could wash clothes, but it could not force a family to notice who sorted them. It could spin water out of fabric, but it could not make people respect the planning behind clean drawers and ready beds. The burden became lighter, but not always more visible. Even laundromats tell part of this story. For people without a washer at home, shared machines became a different kind of relief. A laundromat could turn hand washing into a timed errand. It could give renters, students, workers, and lower-income families access to machinery they could not keep in their own homes. It could also become a place where domestic labor moved into public view, even if only for an hour or two. Rows of machines, carts, dryers, folding tables, coins, baskets, and waiting chairs turned private work into shared routine. But access still matters. There are still places where washing clothes means carrying water, scrubbing by hand, rinsing in buckets, or depending on rivers, basins, or shared outdoor spaces. In those places, laundry still consumes strength in a way many machine users rarely imagine. The difference between machine washing and hand washing is not just comfort. It can be education time, work time, rest time, safety, health, mobility, opportunity. A washing machine does not solve every problem in a woman's life, but when a machine removes hours of repeated physical labor, it changes what becomes possible around that life. This is why the machine deserves more attention than it gets. History often celebrates inventions that move fast, fly high, cross oceans, fire engines, build cities, or change communication. Those inventions are important. But some of the most powerful machines in daily life do not look dramatic. They sit against a wall, they turn in a corner, they clean the evidence of ordinary living. And because they are domestic, people often treat them as less important. That is a mistake. The washing machine changed the relationship between women and time. It reduced one of the most exhausting forms of household labor. It helped reshape standards of cleanliness. It made larger wardrobes more practical. It supported school, work, and public life by making clean clothing easier to maintain. It turned laundry from a punishing event into a repeated routine that could be managed alongside the rest of life. That is not a small change. It is the kind of change that hides in plain sight because it became normal. A person can open a washer today, throw in dirty clothes, and barely think about the generations of women who spent whole days doing the same job. Doing the same job with fire, tubs, soap, and raw muscle. The clean shirt that feels ordinary in the morning carries a long history of labor behind it. So does the towel after a shower. So does the sheet on a bed. The washer is not just an appliance. It is a time machine in the most practical sense. It takes work that once consumed hours and compresses it into a cycle. It is a labor machine because it performs motions that once came from women's bodies. It is a social machine because it helped change what families expected from clothing, cleanliness, and home life. And it is also a reminder. Everyday comfort usually has a history. Someone carried the water before pipes did. Someone scrubbed the cloth before motors did. Someone lost time before machines saved it. Someone's hands paid the price before buttons made the job look easy. So the next time a washer starts turning in the background, it may sound ordinary. But that sound belongs to one of the biggest quiet changes in domestic history. It is the sound of hours being returned. It is the sound of a burden being reduced. And for millions of women, it was the sound of a life becoming slightly less trapped by the endless work of keeping everyone else clean. If this story made you see a normal household object differently, like the video, subscribe for more hidden histories behind the things we use every day, and comment with the next object you want to see explained.